I don't know how much you know about it,
Mm.
but it was like I had cancer in there. And when they removed it, they found it was like a 10 centimeter tumor.
Oh my god.
So it was like the whole right hand side here was like basically a tumor,
Wow.
and there was one part of it that was really highly aggressive.
Wow.
So so I've got follow up stuff. I actually on the way here I got a call from Green Lane, and then I've got some stuff with Super Clinic the week
Mm.
after. So
Mm.
there's some ongoing treatment stuff. The follow up is just to make sure, like, there's going to be more further treatment, but it's just to make sure everything's out. Yeah. But at this stage, I don't actually know. You know, at least a 10 centimeter tumor's out.
Yes.
Like
Yeah, yeah,
that's a
yeah,
good
yeah.
start. You
Oh,
know.
that is a
Yeah.
really good start. Oh, so I just want to say congratulations. That is I didn't know it was such a big deal. I know it's a
Well,
big deal, don't get me
yeah. Yeah.
wrong, but I just didn't know the
I didn't know as well, really.
wow.
It's life. It's actually life changing because now I've got to take medication for the rest of my life around that stuff. But it's better than life ending. By the sounds of what it said in the medical report, like that aggressive one, if it was left for another 6 months or a year, it could have actually been quite bad. Like it was starting to divide quite quickly. So yeah, that's kind of scary to know that it was,
High five.
yeah,
So what I mean is even when they had the operation, they didn't expect it to be
yeah. I didn't
wow.
expect it to be that big.
Wow.
Um, and I don't think the scan. I guess it's like they didn't really fully know, like until
Until
they,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
The wow. This is big. I don't think I can even understand what that means, and thank you for sharing it.
I mean, yeah, that's not something you typically expect. Like, I mean, they were testing to make sure that it wasn't cancer,
Yeah.
but in my head, it was like, yeah, it's probably not. It's probably just some other stuff. But yeah, then it came back that it was, and like no one in my family's had cancer before, so I
Wow.
had to be the black sheep in the family in that regard,
Yeah.
and obviously it kind of affected my parents and the wider
Mm.
social circle that I've got.
Of course, people who
Yeah,
care about you will be
yeah.
worried about you.
Mm.
Have a sense of worry now. Even are you
Eh,
okay?
I think I will be okay. Like this is the thing. Like I've sort of had from this experience is I can only just show up and do the medical appointments and just stick with what the facts actually are. Like there's no evidence that this highly aggressive cancer is spread anywhere else.
Okay.
It may still be in there.
Mm.
But I can't
Yeah.
think about that too much.
No.
I just got to stick
No.
on the facts that
Like,
at the moment there's no evidence there's anything in there, and
yeah.
just show up to these appointments
Yeah.
and take it step by step. Yeah,
Do the right things. Go to the
yeah,
appointment.
exactly.
Making sure that follow out and all that, and
Yeah.
also it sounds like you're in a very good hand as well with the medical professional.
Yeah, it took them quite a few months to actually, because they did tests and a few different types of tests
Yeah.
before they kind of concluded.
Yeah.
But as soon as they found out what it was like priority one, and it was just like really quickly done.
Wow.
And that was during the like Christmas and New Year period where the hospitals are obviously people on leave and stuff.
Yeah.
So I found out about it in November. There was a few pre-admission surgery stuff that they had to do, a few other tests,
Mm.
things like check my voice box and stuff. Then, yeah, basically as soon as it was available, and it was
Mm.
within 2 months, it was in and out. It's not, yeah, that wasn't. I didn't expect that to be a part of my lived experience,
Mm.
especially in my 30s. I didn't think
Mm.
because you kind of think cancer is something you worry about, and I'm always been worried about this stuff. But I didn't, I wouldn't have thought I would have got it,
Mm.
at 34 when
Mm.
it was it was a bit of a surprise. Yeah.
I hear you.
Mm.
Yeah. And then I wasn't expected that myself.
I don't think anyone was. I was talking to a friend in Australia. He's like, "That's the last thing we expected." Like there was
Yeah.
so many other things that they expected to go wrong, but that was not one of them.
And
Mm.
but everybody must be pleased that like this is being done. This
Yeah.
is clear at the moment, and
Yeah.
you're wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it. What an introduction. I guess if I want to introduce, yeah, I'll introduce myself. I'm Shelwin Khan. I guess I come from a lived experience of mental health and addiction challenges starting in my youth. And I've been clean and sober for nearly 7 years. But within that time, I've still had some severe mental health challenges, including a psych ward admission and stuff. So, even though I've been clean and sober
Mm.
for quite a while, I've still had to deal with ongoing mental health stuff, which has been sort of separate to my addiction recovery. It feels unjust sometimes. I have to work on both
I
quite
hear you.
intensive.
And that also make you wiser and also good at your job, because like we were just talking about how many jobs you have, like you 5. I was like, wow.
There's also volunteer stuff that I do as well.
Yeah.
But also I really want to get that work-life balance thing going later this year. You know.
And you study, by the way.
Yes, yeah. So I was studying last year as well, but this year I'm starting a postgrad,
Yeah.
which I'm looking forward to. You know, I decided to do this postgrad in applied management just because it was free.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yes, good on you.
yeah, why not? You know, like it's a level 8 cert, and if it's all free through SIT, by the way, just a plug for them there.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's worth looking into. You know, I'm just doing it out of interest though. You know, and it feels a lot because I studied at university. I did a degree in psychology. And there was a lot of pressure around that time in my life because there was uncertainty in where my life was going to go. I was still very heavily in addiction and mental health challenges, and I think just being in my early 20s, there was a lot of uncertainty about things. Whereas this time coming back to uni, it doesn't even matter if I fail or pass, and it's quite liberating. You know, ideally I pass. You know, it'll be great to pass, but yeah, that pressure's not there, and I love that. You know.
So can we go back to, like introducing yourself as who you are? So from what I understand, you are Fijian Indian.
Yeah, that part is I would say Fijian. Like my parents are from Fiji, but obviously with Fijian Indians, we've got like another story of being sent as indentured servants from India. So I don't really have a big connection to India. And also my mum's side's got Nepalese as well.
Oh,
so
cool.
From Nepal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have any connection to any of those countries or Fiji in a way. So I was born in New Zealand.
So you will be second generation.
Born and raised in New Zealand. I grew up in South Auckland, and that's been pretty much my culture, really. You know, at the same time, like having this history as my family's from Fiji, from India, and a lot of people looked at me as only like Fijian Indian.
That's right.
You know, even though I don't have much of a connection,
No.
I can't speak Hindi. I don't know much about the culture. When I've been to Fiji in the past, I felt very disconnected from it. You know, and there's also the other side where Indians that grew up in either India or Fiji have also sort of seen me as a plastic Indian.
I know.
So I got both sides of it. Some people only view me as Indian.
Yes.
And then other people have only viewed me as a plastic Indian, you know?
Is that what they call it? Plastic Indian?
Yeah. There's some other words that I've heard, but let's just stick with that one.
Really?
You know? Yeah.
So it's quite, sorry, I mean like the word to me sounds quite insulting.
Yeah. It's not, we're going back to more like when I was growing up,
Yeah.
you know, like within social circles and schools and stuff like this. I definitely didn't feel that much a part of those groups. Not, and not to say that's everybody, you know, like, that's also another thing. I had a lot of Indian friends. I had a lot of Maori friends, a lot of Asian friends, Chinese, Malaysians, Samoans. There was actually quite a lot of Samoan friends I still in touch from primary and intermediate. Yeah, so there was that's South Auckland though, isn't it? It's like this massive multicultural melting pot. And sometimes it's really great for that, and sometimes there's a bit of tension due to that as well. And I've definitely experienced both sides where there's been a lot of racial tension, but then there's also been this opportunity to do different, learn about different cultures. Like in primary school, I was part of the Samoan dance club, like,
Cool.
it was mainly because my teacher was Samoan.
Yes.
And I was just like, yeah, we'll do this, So there's somewhere like photos and videos of me, doing some Samoan sort of,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the cool thing about New Zealand as well. Particularly South Auckland, but I think New Zealand as a whole, like we're so diverse in culture,
And you get to experience it, especially studying in New Zealand in the primary school, secondary school, and all that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you're very open-minded, so you just go with the flow.
That's actually,
Yeah. And so, what happened when you went to university at the time when you study psychology was quite stressful time?
Well, it starts a lot earlier than that, really. Like, it starts with my childhood, certain aspects of it. But I think a place to start with that is really my teenage years. I started using drugs around 13, 14. Basically found my first experience was with benzos. I got these benzos and I got super high off them, and I loved the effect of them. And that was around about 13, 14. And from that point, I basically chased some kind of high, that euphoria that it brought, but also that release of, I guess, pain. Like I felt normal and happy, I think, for one of the first times in my life when I used, which is, at least that's how I remember a lot of it, like it was like I took this thing and I just felt amazing, and by the time I was 15, I had an overdose and I ended up in Middlemore. If I would have loved it when as a 15-year-old, I showed up to Middlemore due to an overdose, and it was a very kind of, how would you say, it was a very clinical process, and being a 15-year-old, you don't really know how to respond to everything properly, and there's still a lot of fear, a lot of not understanding the world. So I would have loved to have a peer support or somebody that was potentially lived experience there. So that's where it sort of started for me.
Especially when you're 15.
Yeah.
Not being judged or feel like you being assessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the questions, I mean, I don't want to get into specifics of, but there was a few questions they asked. I was like, what has this actually got to do with anything? It's like they were prying into all the aspects of my life as a 15-year-old.
I was going to say almost like an autopsy about like the whole life, but like I don't need that.
Exactly, I don't need that. Yeah, definitely. So that was sort of my first experience. Like I overdosed. Started using these substances, overdosed, ended up in ED. A few months after that, and this is where there was intervention, like good intervention at that point. The next part probably wouldn't have happened, but I sort of had a similar experience where I blacked out on some substances, and I remember sort of walking out of the door at home, and then I remember waking up in the Papakura police station, and there was this like glass door, and I just didn't know where I was, how I got there, lost the context of all that stuff. There was police officers on the other side, and all of a sudden I was like, I'm really hungry. So I started like talking to the police officer across, I need some food, give me some food, and not sure how and one of the police officers was saying to him, like, don't talk to him, just leave him alone. But that police officer went and got me some snacks and stuff. And then the next thing I knew, I was being sent over to the adult, the adolescent and child and family unit near Starship. In Auckland Hospital, and they sent me into the high intensity ward there, the high dependency ward or whatever. And I remember they took me my shoelaces, the doors weren't able to be locked, and like as a 15-year-old, this is quite an intense experience.
Scary.
At the root of it was my drug use and stuff like this, but there was also underlying mental health stuff that was going.
Because that's what I hear is a very punitive approach of your like experience, because it's not therapeutic. The whole mental health services approaches and all that are very punitive.
It's quite the thing is, like, the history of a lot of the support around mental health hasn't been good in New Zealand, also globally, but in New Zealand when you look at things like Lake Alice and Selwyn Leaks and all that kind of stuff. So our history, this is adolescent mental health we're talking about. It's had a dark sort of start, and there's definitely stories around things like Kingseed and Carrington that are also. So by the time this was in 2007 when I had this admission to the psych ward, and things had changed a little bit.
That's right.
But there was still a lot of judgment, and being a youth in that space, it was also very scary because like all of a sudden you're taken out of society and plugged into basically this high what do they call it, like a high dependency ward or whatever, sorry, my language is
no it is, because it's highly secure, highly risk averse environment where your rights and also like all your behavior suddenly being monitored.
Definitely.
And you're only 15.
Only 15, yeah. Just it was kind of, that environment was the secure ward was really difficult, but when they shifted me, I think a week or two after that into the more medium one. And that experience was actually a lot better. There was like a music room, and I started playing guitar, and there was a friend I met in there at the time who was hearing voices and stuff like this, and he would drum and I would play guitar, and that was therapeutic, you know, like stuff like that. I really enjoyed within that space, you know, the yeah,
The
the,
human connection.
the human connection, yeah.
The opportunity to do something meaningful, even though as simple as playing
Good.
music instruments, but finding someone
Yeah.
who understands your experience without saying much.
Exactly. I think those creative outlets were really helpful, especially because I had a lot of anger and a lot of rage inside of me from a lot of things that have happened, and I didn't really know how to have an outlet for that.
Or process
You know,
it.
that time, when I talked about my first overdose in school, actually, it was from school that took me from the ambulance to minimal. I remember, like, I threw this, I think it was like a chair or something through this wall, and there was this hole there, you know. And the next time I went to this was in a nurse's office. And the next time I went there, they got a filing cabinet and just kind of put it there and blocked it off. And I think that's the thing. There were so many little things that were just unspoken.
Really?
Yeah, you know.
They didn't. Even after you come back, they didn't tell you what's going on. They didn't say.
I remember that part. No, I was lucid. That was the overdose was separate from the psych ward thing. I don't remember what led up to it.
Yeah.
I learned about it later. They expelled me from the school, and I had to make an apology to the board of trustees or something like this. Make a formal apology and have social workers help do all that stuff, you know. So yeah, that's where it sort of started with me, with my challenges around mental health and addiction as well. And you know, that just followed on for another 13 years, you know.
And I'm curious, like they usually something then triggered change behavior. Probably something that in you or at the right time where help finally what you needed came along that spark some hope in you to say, I think I have enough of this. I want something else.
Yeah, that moment of change.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, I guess for me there was a huge build up to that. Like I was in rehab in 2014 or 2015 for the first time, and I got kicked out of there. And what followed, I was 24 at this point. And what followed was like being in and out of treatment center, you know, 3 attempts at treatment centers, in and out of the mental health, community mental health teams, dealing a lot with, well, the addiction and mental health got really bad. It got really dark. And I was at a point where I didn't want to continue living. And after my 3rd attempt at rehab, I got about 16 days up where I didn't use anything in the context of the rehab, but it was too much. I walked out and basically relapsed immediately, and several months just disappeared. And I don't fully remember those months that followed me leaving this, you know. But I know that my world got a lot more smaller and darker. You know, like I was very isolated. And yeah, I became very isolated, and mentally it's just got to this point I really don't want to keep on living, because I tried for so many times to go through rehab. I had all this support through medication, psychiatrists, therapists,
professionals.
Yeah, the professionals. I had a lot of support around over the years, you know. And I kind of, you know, I had been experiencing this pretty much from a child, but you know, more realistically, severely around 14 onwards. You know, like at that point, that was more than half my life, because I was 27 at the point I got sober. It was 13 years of dealing with mental health, addiction, and this isolation. After I felt like I lost all hope. One night, I ended up, let's just say I was texting somebody to get some harder drugs, which I hadn't used in a while for that point. And I woke up and she had been like messaging very angrily, "Where are you?" Because I had passed out. And I just woke up and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't live like this. So either today I'm going to end it, or I'm, you know, and that was my initial thought when I woke up. And, you know, later that day, I looked into a 12-step meeting, and I decided, okay, you know what, like, let's just go there. Like, at least there's people that understand a little bit of what you're going through. This probably wasn't my thinking at the time, you know, but I just needed to be around, you know, some kind of support. And it wasn't so easy you can't just walk into a lot of services, you know. So I went to this 12-step meeting, and I got the time wrong. I was meant to start at 7:30, but I thought it was 7. So I rocked up there, near 7,
Yeah.
and there was this old guy that was setting the meeting up, and we started talking, and he said to me, he was 28 years sober and clean, and to me that blew my mind for some reason. It wasn't just that he had been sober for such a long time. There was this like peace, serenity about him, this calmness. And in my world, I was just around basically people that were going through addiction and mental health challenges. So he was such a fresh air, and I was like, wow, like I really want this. Like I don't know what it's going to take to get this, but I really want this. Him being 28 years sober, I was 27 at the time. So it's like he's been sober longer than I've been alive, and he's still he'll be coming up 36 years this year.
Wow.
Like it's amazing,
Amazing.
and so I kind of felt like this kind of I really want what
Yes.
this is, whatever this is. I don't know,
Yeah.
because what I have right now,
Yeah.
I just can't live like this anymore.
Yes.
And that was on the 28th of March 2009. Since then, I haven't used any drugs, any alcohol. I've even quit smoking.
On that meeting.
Yeah, that day, I think there was a lot of pain and struggle that brought me to that point.
Yes.
And
So you just you just went to go
yeah,
Turkey pretty much right after the 12-step meetings.
yeah, pretty much from that meeting. I didn't know that was going to happen as well. Because one thing to note is I had been in and out of 12-step recovery. I had been in and out of rehabs. All these other experiences. So I had no idea that my life was about to change. I wish I had like a snapshot of that moment.
Even just meeting, of course, what you're saying is that person, whoever that day,
he carried the hope.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He showed me that this is not only possible, but that it can be enjoyable. And I could feel that within his energy, the peace and serenity that he had. I felt that, and it was nowhere in my life.
I'm going to hold back my tear because what you say was exactly what Dave Burnside told me.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was that person gave him like, what is this?
Yeah, I know. I've heard a story, and it's like it's so amazing, like how sometimes you get some people that just carry that message, and we don't know where it'll come from.
Yeah.
Like with Dave Burnside, it was I think one of his old acquaintances who had just been freshly clean, right?
Yes, right.
With me, it was some random stranger I had never met before, and he was just like what I wanted. I didn't know how to get there, but eventually happened.
And so, of course, you're still in touch with this guy, this gentleman.
Yes, yeah.
And so let's go forward to live experience. Like how do you get into live experience space? Because you started with your recovery, and then what sparked you to enter into the?
Well, yeah, I basically went into the lived experience sector because I didn't know what else to do at that point. Because I had spent years of my life unemployed due to my challenges, and I had a career once within sales. Let's just say that there was a bit public, but I burnt it down, so I didn't have an opportunity to go back to that. Yeah, I don't know if that part is relevant, but I guess like how I got into the lived experience sector is initially I just wanted to get sober and clean.
Sure.
At that point, I did a lot of those 12-step meetings, and then I started going to Arrive that existed back then, and did the RAP course and did the WELL program,
Recovery
Innovations, yes, which was an amazing place because you could just drop in, and there was peers around. It was all peer run.
Yes,
and that's I guess another place where I started to hear different types of lived experience. And actually being able to conversate with people around lived experience. Because within 12-step meetings, it's a lot about just you share, and everybody has a turn of sharing, and we just all listen to each other's experience. And sometimes, now I can go talk to people about that. But when I was in early recovery, I was too shy and afraid to, someone shares something amazing. I'm like, wow, that's like life-changing, but I can't approach them, But within the context of RI, within these classes, we were having these conversations around what was our lived experience, what was helping us get well, tools and strategies that we're putting into place,
Wow.
So I basically just went to RI for like pretty much every day that I could,
So you're surrounding yourself with the people who have the same goal to get
Mm.
well and better without any clinical intervention.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That was pretty much it. It was just around other people that had gone through similar experiences.
Yeah.
And I did that for 10 months, you know, like I went to all these meetings. I went to RI pretty regularly. I got connected with Drive, you know, their bipolar support group. You know, I ended up going there, and that was the first time I ever heard people come from a strengths-based approach for bipolar. Because like from when I was from discipled in my youth,
Mm.
it was always said to be like this thing where you got to be careful how much
Yes.
stress you manage.
Yeah.
It's basically an illness and risk, you know.
Deficit
And
model
yeah, a
is-
very deficit model.
yeah.
But
yeah.
then within this bipolar support group, there was people that were well, they were sharing the strengths of bipolar, you know, or sharing a different aspect of it that I never really had heard before. And these things were, I was sort of in the background about that. Like, I was really like, I don't have bipolar, you know,
Yeah.
and I was very good at masking it until I
Yeah.
wasn't,
Mm.
you know, like there's a lot of people in my life that have said to me like, oh, you don't seem like you got bipolar,
Yeah.
you know, but it's just, I can be highly functional. But I found what the trouble with that is when you do go through crisis, people are like, what, how come you're going through this? You know, like you seem so well, but it's like, it's really difficult with those that are, well, with myself, I can say that at times has masked it very
Yeah.
well. When I
Yes.
do become unwell, people just don't know how to
Yeah.
respond, you know?
I hear you, because even with my depressions, as an Asian, I learned how to mask myself. You know, like I will use all my energy just to pretend I'm well. But then that energy was so consuming. By the end of it, I crashed because
Yeah.
I have nothing left for myself. But that masking is such hard work. So
Yeah.
I
Definitely.
totally know where you're coming from.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there was a lot of things within the context of bipolar where I couldn't mask it. Like
Yeah.
sometimes the depression got to a point where I just wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Things like having a shower, having breakfast, you know, all that kind of stuff. It was not possible. It didn't feel possible in that stage, you know.
Yeah.
And then also when I've been manic and have gone really, I guess like having delusions of grandeur, this kind of thing, thinking like I'm a spiritual leader that's about to guide some random people I met at a party to some mystical awakening, like that kind of thing I couldn't hide as well, you know. But for the most part, there were you know, despite having these acute episodes, you know, sorry, that's a clinical term, but it's a way to think about it.
Yeah.
These more, you know, these sort of more, you know, severe mental, and it was sort of, there were periods where things were quite normal and I seemed quite functional. And so people within my life that had met, like, because I would burn bridges, you know, like I would go through some kind of a psychosis or manic sort of thing and maybe do stuff. And then I might feel a little bit embarrassed. And then I'll go hide and be depressed for several months. And then I would come out again and I would try to surround myself with new people because they didn't know the truth of what I can be like, you know. And also when I've got, you know, alcohol and drugs also fueling this. There was a lot of things I did within my teenage years and within my you know, early to mid 20s where it was very socially destructive, and so I had to keep finding new social circles to be around, you know, because people don't want to hang out with me, and some of the people that were my good genuine friends I found too ashamed in many ways because they had started to become, you know, they might have got a partner and were starting a family, or career wise they might be doing really well, or you know, in other measures, you know, they could be doing very well. Whereas I felt my life for, you know, basically the first 27 years was like just a mess. You know, I couldn't hold down work. I couldn't hold down relationships. I was just barely functional. And I had to medicate through all of that. So yeah, that's sort of where I was for most of my life, really, when I think about it. And then I met this guy at this meeting who was, you know, more an alternative, you know, alternative lifestyle to what I was living. And yeah, so I started going to Drive. I started going to the bipolar support group. I started going to RI, doing all the courses. I basically stayed in RI long enough and did the PET till they had to hire me, you know, and I'm very grateful for that, you know, like I didn't know where else to go as well. That's another thing. Like I've got massive gaps in my CV from years of like just not doing anything. And the references I had, they wouldn't have said anything positive. Like it would have been very negative. So I didn't know, you know, at that point at 27, like no work experience basically. And all I had was this history with mental health and addiction challenges. And, you know, I was like, I want to have some use out of this, you know, like I've gone through all this stuff and I know what it's like to be when I'm alone through all this stuff as well. You know, what it was like when I was, 15 in that psych ward by myself. You know, what it was like when I had my first overdose and when I had my second overdose, or when I had my first drink driving charge, you know, and when all that stuff, you know, the criminal stuff, you know, having to deal with lawyers and community mental health teams and not being able to advocate for myself. And that loneliness and despair I felt just being so isolated, thinking my story is very unique and it's very like no one will understand what I've gone through. No one will understand my family history. No one will know what it's like to be an Indian that's grown up in New Zealand but has connections to Fiji he doesn't know about, or connections to India and Nepal he doesn't know about. Like my entire identity was lost for such a long time, and that was very lonely. And I was like, if I can be there for others that are going through these addiction challenges, mental health challenges, whatever it may be, in some capacity, and make them feel less alone, I really want to be able to do that. The first natural step was to become a peer support after I was 10 months sober, done PET, got hired by RI. At that point, I was also involved with running the bipolar support group as well, which was a group that, again, this was voluntarily, but they had helped me get well, because they supported me in those early, and yeah, that was pretty much my journey into peer support. And things have definitely evolved since then. Like when I first started at RI, I was like, this is the place that has changed my life. Outside of these 12-step meetings, RI has been such a fundamental part of my recovery. I want this to exist forever. Then my first year into the job, we had the lockdown happen. And in the lockdown, I had another little bit of a mental health spiral because isolation, all this kind of stuff. But when we came out of it, I remember then we had this big team meeting. They basically said like our contract had been axed. And
it was quite sudden.
It was very sudden.
I know.
And the staff there, I remember people crying.
It was a shock.
It was a huge shock because it was such a big part of all our recoveries. Right? All the people that worked there had been involved with it, and we were all so passionate about it. And I really wanted that to be like my forever job. But yeah, and I didn't know how to respond to that. But I guess I've had that experience a few times now with different places and stuff. And yeah, so from there, I ended up going and working in a treatment center for a little while. And then I became really unwell after a period. But like I had left the job, and this is going to be a bit of a dark story. Like RI had shut down. I worked at this treatment center for about 9 months, and I was starting to have unravel mentally again. So I decided to leave the job before anything. There was a few warning signs, but I was like, nothing bad has happened yet, So let's just leave this. I got in my car, went down to this massive, first time I ever went to the South Island, and it was life-changing, I came back to Auckland after a couple of months, and one of my friends that I used to drink and drug with, he reached out for some help. And this is a good mate of mine, and I was like, okay, I'll go see him. So I went and saw him on the Thursday, and it was just chaos. Like he had there was a lot going on in his life. The people around him were really also unwell, and he wasn't ready to get clean and sober on that day. A few days later, he was really at this point of desperation, and I took him out to my home group, and he came and he went afterwards with this group of people, and he said he really felt connected. And like for the first time, he wouldn't share because he said if he shared, he knew he was going to break down and cry. And this is let's just say a very tough guy that's got into fights with police and got this whole history of antisocial behavior. And he was within this meeting, and he's like, I can't share. Like he told me afterwards because he was about to cry.
In that
context,
12-step as well.
Yes, this was 12-step.
Wow.
Yeah, this was my home group. And one particular guy who shared it within that meeting, he just felt it so strongly. And he was almost in tears. Then on Sunday, we went to another meeting and went and had coffee and stuff. And he met a few more people. Sunday night, he was texting me. And he's like, oh, how are you doing? And I said, I'm all right. Then he said he's all right as well. And he's watching Bathurst or something. I think he was really into his cars, And then in the early hours of Monday morning, he ended up killing himself. And that spiraled me because I didn't expect that to be the end result. So I was already on like a bit of thin ice
Yes.
due to all the stuff before.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this happens,
Yeah.
and a month later I ended up having a full-on breakdown.
Of course.
2.5 years sober, 2.5 years off drugs, 2.5 years, and I thought, this is not what recovery is meant to look like, right? Like you're meant to get sober and clean, and your life's meant to be amazing. And I had this point where I just lost a friend. It was a very dark moment.
Yes. Yeah.
I ended up in the psych ward, also suicidal, mental health stuff
Of course.
had this thing.
Yeah.
And
It really triggered you, of course, because it's your friend.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I often thought about like, why did I get a chance to get sober and clean and actually get to enjoy this life that's just become better and better as time has gone on? Well, he's died. And since then, many have passed. This is the unfortunate reality of addiction and mental health. Like, I'm going to a funeral tomorrow of one of my friends. He's actually Malaysian as well. And he was 40. He was 40, forever 40. There's been friends I have lost within their 20s, within their 30s. His one was more alcohol related, health stuff that he was told basically 2 or 3 years ago, if he drank again, he would die. And then I remember being in his apartment maybe 4 or 5 months later, and he was in full-blown relapse drinking. And I was like, I don't know, this is it. Because he knew the news, but he survived another 2 years. There's been a lot of people that I have known that have passed due to addiction and mental health stuff. And that's really motivated also reason why I want to stay in the sector, particularly from a lived experience perspective, because I've been there. I've had 2 suicide attempts in my life. I've had, 2 overdoses. I've gone through all this. And then I've also been on the other end where I've had this whānau experience of having friends that have taken their lives. There's been quite a few of them, or that they've, gone overdosed and died, or that they've had alcohol-related deaths, and it's always tragic, and it's something now like that actually motivates me to keep going in the sector. I might not be the one that makes the biggest changes or anything like this, but if I can just reach one person and save their life for that moment, yeah.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear all the losses. It's never easy. And what I want to ask you then, like, so you talk about after that, then what happened for, like the 2.5 years you were sober, and then suddenly, and then how do you,
So, I mean, one of the saving graces is I did stay clean and sober through that whole experience, because and then so I was back within mental health services, and I guess it was also a good thing. I mean, it wasn't a good thing the way it happened, like all of that is bad, but it was a good thing because for a while I was thinking I just have addiction challenges. That's the reason of my mental health stuff. But this experience also highlighted like, no, there is mental health stuff that I need to be aware of. So after I left the psych ward, I ended up deciding I don't want to work with peer support. There was I don't want to do anything with mental health anymore, like ever again. Done with anything mental health, anything addiction. Never again. And I went and I had a few odd jobs actually. At one point I was catching chickens, which is really sad. Don't ever do that job. You're running into these like massive cages and you're picking chicken up and you're ramming them into cages. It's really sad.
I didn't know there's even such a job.
Yeah, it's a very strange job.
Oh, okay.
It's like these long sheds, and it's all night. You're basically going and getting chickens, throwing them into cages. Forklifts are coming in, getting it. There's dead chickens. There's dead.
God,
the smell was horrible. So I didn't last too long at that job. But that was one of my. Actually, that was my second job after I left the cycle. I went. And then I had a friend in recovery who whose parents owned a paper tube factory, and I worked with. And it was actually quite therapeutic when I was working with him, because we would he motivated me, he inspired me as well, because he had gone through a lot of challenges, particularly with a brain injury, and he had to learn how to read and write again and how to walk. And he was said similar things to me, like that he'll never have a proper relationship, that he'll never have a full driver's license, be able to drive. and he taught himself to read and write, and like so we were working together in this factory, like stacking paper tubes. We're creating these tubes on these machines and stacking them. And it was like very therapeutic. And yeah, so I jumped around from that, and then I went to the chicken catching job temporarily, and then I was in this print shop for a while. Not for a while, like 5 months, and I got relentlessly bullied there. And again, these were from Indians. This is the interesting kind of thing, we kind of think, all we stick together, but they kind of, again, they saw because I'm a Kiwi Indian basically, and I didn't fit in within their culture. And anything that went wrong, they sort of blamed it on me, and they gave us these big machines to operate that they never showed us how to use really. And if anything went wrong, even if it wasn't me, it was always my fault, And when I resigned, and the 2IC basically did a song and dance. It's like how happy he is I'm leaving. It was a very strange work environment thinking about this now. Yeah, it was. Anyway, so at this point I had gone through, like I had lost a friend. I had gone through a few different jobs that weren't peer-based. And I was sick of Auckland. Like I felt like this was a place that I didn't belong anymore. I had grown up, I had lived my entire life in South Auckland, but I felt I was at a point where it just felt like walls were everywhere. So I got into my car with no plan at all and just started driving. And I drove around the country. I went and slept in some random forests, ended up in the South Island for the second time. And I never went down the West Coast before. So I went through all the West Coast, freedom camping in my car, which you're not technically meant to do, but it's, So I just slept in my car for like a month, every now and then I would go into a hotel just to have a shower and all this kind of stuff, And I found myself in Invercargill and Tiana. And I was like, I've always loved Tiana. I've always loved Milford Sounds. That area, the first time I went there, it sort of blew my mind. It was a really small, peaceful town, and I had connections in Invercargill, I had connections in Queenstown, so I thought, I'll live here. So I moved there, and I stayed there for about a year. I stayed on this farm, lifestyle block. It was 8 k's out of town, and to access it you had to go down this gravel, like it'll be a tar seal road, and then all of a sudden it'll turn to gravel. So I had to drive down this gravel road just to access where I was staying. I loved it, and it was in the middle of nowhere. There was no neighbors or anything.
Wow.
I started working in the supermarket there, in the Fresh Choice, and also within the Chinese restaurant as a dishwasher. So I was doing these other, the Fresh Choice was my main job, and sometimes I would do the night shift there. And I'll finish about 10 o'clock, 10:30. And in the Southland, the sun is still coming down. I think I finished about 10. I'll be driving back down this, amazing country road, gravel road, seeing the sun still set. And I get home and I look up and the whole the sky, just all these stars. It was so peaceful and relaxing. And it was like one of the best experiences. And people were saying to me like, oh, you're going there to isolate. You got to put your recovery first. But this is how I put my recovery first.
Exactly.
I found there was a 12-step meeting there, and I made it, my home group because there was no other option. So I started attending. I attended that meeting every Tuesday night in Tiano for the time I was there. I got the key to it. I had the key. I was like, I've got a commitment now. And there was a laundry dryer that was in front, and in the lifestyle block we were on, there was only a washer. So I would do my laundry, come and put it in the dryer, and then go and open this meeting, set everything up, and I did that for a while. And if I wanted to do another meeting or meet other people that were in recovery, I would have to drive 2 hours to Invercargill, 2 hours to Queenstown, 1 hour 45 minutes to Edendale, or 1.5 hours to Winton, and that was one way. So like that's a 3-hour trip. Is the closest second meeting I had. And I remember the first time I actually drove to Winton because I was going through a lot of stress. So I want to be around other people that I can talk to more openly. So I drove 1.5 hours to this meeting out in Winton, and there was 2 people there. It was an older lady and an older gentleman. I was like, oh no, now I have to drive an hour and a half back. But what ended up happening is that was the best meeting for me at that time, because I really needed it, and I really needed that connection with others that had lived experience. And I stayed there for a couple of hours. I was there a little bit early. stay through the meeting, and then we talked for a while afterwards, and then I had to drive back for it. So it was all up probably like maybe a 4 or 5 hour investment.
Wow.
But I had to do that for my recovery. And
Yes.
that's another
Good on
thing
you.
I found because these rural towns within New Zealand, the support isn't as
Wow.
abundant. And
Exactly.
in Auckland, I mean, there's so many services,
Yes.
so much support. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in these rural
Yeah.
towns. My team manager that was in the place that I was working down there, she shared with me, like, her husband was a farmer that had, the farmer suicide things, had
Yeah.
taken his life a couple
Yeah.
of years before.
Yeah.
And there was all this sort of gaps of services. And it actually put in perspective, like, how lucky I have been within Auckland to have the support that I've gotten, it was a really eye-opener. And I'm so glad that I made this trip down. Like, it started basically because my life in Auckland was a mess. I was like 3 years sober or something.
It's interesting because it sounds like you are someone who appreciate freedom. Freedom of being who you are, freedom of having your own choices, freedom of what you should be doing. Also, the ability to make your own choices. Instinctively, you know what you want and what you need. But it's the noises that keep telling you who you should be, what you should be doing, drain your energy. The choices in the end often you make were the right one.
But sometimes I second guess myself, and I guess that's a part of like my experiences that I've had before when I've been manic or depressed, where I've questioned my thinking, whether it is the right thing. So I had a lot of low self-worth, self-confidence, low self-esteem through my addiction, through the mental health stuff. And one of the parts of recovery has actually been learning to trust myself more.
Yeah.
And that's been a process because I put myself in situations I didn't know if they were going to be okay. Like that whole trip to the South Island and relocating there. I mean, that could have gone so badly at so many points.
I tell you, all the clinicians would be jumping up and down and say, no, you can't do that. It's a risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I guess this is one of the things about us that have gone through these challenges. We're survivors. Like, we've learned how to navigate systems. We can navigate almost anything,
Exactly. And what I respect you the most, like, you're doing it from a space where you know things are getting too much. You know, whatever that the structures provided is actually stifling me. I can't breathe.
Yeah, like that job I was telling you about, the print shop, that I resigned, and I actually left on pretty bad terms. Like, I was supposed to do a resignation period, but I just couldn't handle it. Like, there was too much abuse there, really. But people were telling me you should build character by making sure you can. Because I was only in it about 5 months.
When you're being bullied.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the advice.
Because it's like, you got to build
Who
character.
said that to you?
It was a friend of mine back in the day, But even my mum was saying, like, oh, you're getting so much money. But I wasn't even getting that much money. It was minimum wage,
you were being bullied. No one hear that bit.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I would say, like, they're like, yeah, but because the thing is, my record with work was so hit and miss. So I think a lot of people's perspective was like, oh, he's just so useless because he can't hold down a job. You have to actually like man up and actually like take control of this and hold down a job. And I'm like, no, I am not doing this. Like, I can't handle this environment because it wasn't good for me,
Yeah, it's not good for your mental health. It's not that the people there wasn't even nice to you.
Exactly.
There's no respect. Why you want to be at a place 8 hours and feel worse about yourself?
I think you would probably understand this from Asian cultures. There's very I guess like a money orientated view, and it's not so much about like like it was a lot about like just work, get money, and don't
put your head down, do the work, shut up,
be successful, But success to me doesn't look like having a Ferrari and a mansion, and I mean, those things would be nice. Although I'll probably go with a Skyline rather than a Ferrari, but whatever. Like, these aren't essential. Yeah. I mean, success for me and the deepest of my depression was literally being able to get out of bed and have a meal, or to be able to reach out to somebody and have a conversation. Like being able to actually call somebody or message them. When I feel like that, to me was like, for me, for a very long time, what success looked like was basically not dying. Like everything else was a bonus. So like my measure of what success is completely different to, having a successful career or having a relationship with children, a big family, like or good family, all that kind of stuff. None of those kinds of things were ever on the table for me for
Yeah.
a very long time, and it was all about survival.
Yeah.
And if I could survive today, like
Yeah.
that's what success looked like.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but then these external pressures come.
Yeah.
I can't be in a job that I don't find fulfilling. You can pay me like
Yeah.
$300,000 to go back to that print shop,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't do it.
And like you just hit the nail on the head about when you use the word measure. I mean, like
Mm,
we measure everything. We
mm,
measure human progress. We
mm,
measure human life was supposed to be when you're in certain age. And
mm,
I hated that too. It doesn't mean anything. You have use your experience helping other people change the sector
mm,
and really shaking things out. Speak
mm.
the truth. Yeah.
I think all of our voices speak volumes. And I think one of the risks actually we do have within the lived experience sector is that the success stories are what we like. Like we like the Dave Burnsides and the Deborah Lampshire, and they've been able to overcome what they've
That's
gone
right.
through. But I think one of the things with that also is like there's a lot of people where recovery looks quite different, and it might not be a success story.
I appreciate you say
You
that.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's people lose their battles with
Yeah.
alcoholism or addiction or even
Even
suicide. And I think one of the things is how do we meaningfully include those voices around the table? Because those voices are the most important.
wow.
It's no point sort of having these success stories that are done really
I hear
well.
you.
We really need to have the voices of those that the system isn't working for. Because this is what peer support and the lived experience sector has been designed around.
Mm.
It's for those of us that are like rebelling against the system because the system is failing us.
Mm.
So if we don't include these voices of the people that are struggling and unable to get
Yeah.
recovery, and their voices are just as valid. That's something I hope that our sector actually takes more seriously in the future. It's not just
Mm.
about the success stories.
I hear
You
you.
know?
I
Yeah.
agree. I am
Mm,
with you as well. Reflecting my own experience, having access to all this medication, professional help, and all
mm,
that. When I really look back, they all are based on criticism. I'm
mm,
not good enough. I need to be fixed. And the problems, it
mm,
never been about Ivan is who Ivan is. You
mm.
don't need the medication. You don't need to be fixed. You're allowed to be who you are.
Yeah.
I have never find in a clinical space where I can finally find myself
Mm,
as who I am. I found that through yoga.
mm,
I found that through dancing. I found that through Muay Thai.
mm.
I found that through
Wow,
doing my podcast now. And
it's
I didn't
amazing.
find it through any of the clinical setting that empower me to be
Mm,
who I am fully.
mm.
So I
Yeah.
acknowledge what you say.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's the alternative clinical path. I guess by design, the clinical system is around managing risk.
Yes.
It's identifying these things as illnesses or, from a deficit model by necessity. Because,
Mm,
like, we're looking from a clinical stance, what is wrong with this person? And that's where the problem starts.
yeah.
But at the same time, that's also a very important thing, too.
Yeah.
Like, for me, understanding bipolar and schizoaffective
Yeah.
disorder has given me a framework,
Yes.
but it's
Yeah.
not a death sentence.
No.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like I understand where I fit into these things, and
Mm,
but I don't allow it to sort of like control too much of my identity.
I
You
agree.
know, I think when I was more within within the clinical systems, it almost overshadowed everything. Especially when I was going through
Mm,
a crisis. It's like this is what my illness is.
mm,
And at times in my life, it has become a very strong part of my identity. And then I would rebel against that because it's like, no, I'm not that.
yeah. I know.
I'm me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm me.
Yeah. That is just one of
Yeah.
the framework.
Mhm.
That is an institutional not language, and
Mm,
this institutional creations by human being. I
mm,
hear you. There's a validity in the setting, and some people really needed that, and I want to acknowledge that too. However, that shouldn't be the story that carrying that person forwards,
mm,
isn't it?
mm,
Yes, you are in these situations. That is what we can offer. That is one of the framework we're presenting to you, and that is how this institution is working. Now,
mm.
let's take it to a bigger picture. How this human being live in a society. What does he need?
Exactly.
Because there is just one of the container in the world that allow
Mm.
people to have access in medical care, but it shouldn't be the container of that whole person's story.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree because like we don't exist in isolation, and Like I found for me, one of the biggest things was to wellness was that social connection, and like actually having that belief that getting well was an
Mm,
option, and that was again modeled by other people for me. That guy that I was talking to about at that meeting, like he kind of modeled that this is possible, and it sort of disrupted any idea of like this is a permanent crisis that I'm going through. As much as pain I was at that point because I didn't want to be here anymore, there was this kind of like shining light where it's like there's an alternative to this,
mm.
you know?
Like what you say, like you even feel that peace from that person because that's what you were looking for. You're looking
Mhm,
for hope. You're looking for possibility of
mhm,
alternatives that you couldn't
mhm,
find yourself yet. You can have all the clinicians coming in talk to you about all the jargon, language, and knowledge,
mhm,
but it doesn't resonate to who you at the
mhm,
time were experiencing. And that guy show up or you show up where you can understand there's certain
mhm.
things that is real. It wasn't pretend. It wasn't in the context of the institutionalized,
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
yeah,
I agree with like that's where the hope was really carried, like
yeah,
because again by design the clinical systems and the clinical ways that we deal with things, it's very illness focused. It's
yeah,
and it has its role, but it's not till I hear somebody that has gone through those things,
mm,
that have gone through what I'm going through, that it actually is like, oh, okay, there it isn't a death sentence.
yeah,
It isn't there is ways out of this. I can have a good and
yeah,
meaningful life. And in many ways, I think my challenges with mental health and addiction, they were difficult, but I live like such an amazing life now
mm,
because of that. And I
mm,
don't know if I would have the perspective and the skills that I have today
mm.
if it wasn't for going through those challenges,
Appreciation as well, isn't
Yeah,
it? How far you have
gratitude.
come. Uh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's actually like when reflecting on some of the experiences, like, I mean, I was talking about the psych ward thing and when I was 2.5 years
Mm,
sober, but that's not the only thing I went through, like, I guess the part of the story we're up to was I was at
mm,
Tiano,
mm,
about, nearly 4 years sober and I was living down there. And, I decided to give that up, the dream lifestyle.
mm.
I had a friend of mine in Australia and she offered for me to stay at her place for $100 a week in the kitchen. This is a friend from my old using and drinking days. Who was still heavily using drugs. So I was like, I've never been to Australia. Like this is one of the things about so much of my life was based on survival. So before I never had been in the South Island.
Yeah.
Now I had lived there, and it was one of the most amazing experiences.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, you know what? I want to go and see Australia.
Yeah.
So I ended up making treks to Australia, and I stayed at this person's at her place, and she was actually transgender,
Okay.
and she had come out to me years and years ago,
Yeah.
but we had a bit of a falling out um due to my behaviors and addiction. Let's just say that. Uh, yeah, there was parts of me like that were quite aggressive at times, but yeah, anyway, so we had been in
Mm,
communication for 7 years, and yeah, so I ended up going to her place. She's still using substances heavily, and I started to experience psychosis
mm.
within recovery for the first time because I had never, I guess, in my drinking and drugging, it was never that prominent. But all of a sudden, and this is one of the things where I'm saying I trust you a lot. Like I've been able to drink this whole thing,
Yeah.
and I'm not having any panic attacks right
I
now.
hear you.
I trust you.
Yeah.
But I started having, yeah. That would be actually a great way for the podcast to end. The final episode. Police are coming in.
I will have to question what did I put in there? Yeah.
I mean, it looks a little bit murky to be
It is.
honest.
Yeah, it's a soft drink. Oh my god, that's funny. Sorry. Yeah. Carry on.
Yeah. So I started having these things where I thought my food was being poisoned,
Yeah.
my drinks were being tampered with. And again, this is not what recovery is meant to look like at 4 years, But first time ever, I was in Australia and at this mate's place, and I swear, and I can't confirm this because they were using a lot of the THC, the oils and stuff. And her partner went and made me this cup of coffee in his room, and I'm pretty sure it was laced with weed with the THC oil because the effects were very, much like being on weed again. But I can't confirm this because I was already experiencing psychosis, you know, like I was already getting this paranoia and this and starting to hear things like I was hearing laughter, like maniacal evil laughter in the background. I remember one night I was there and it must have been about, I don't know, 3 a.m. or something. And I was by myself in the kitchen floor. And my body was all locked.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, I've definitely been poisoned. I'm
Wow.
definitely gonna die.
Yeah,
You know, they put stuff into my drinks here.
yeah.
You know, and I called my mum. And actually, I think it was like 4 a.m. in New Zealand. So I called my mum, and I'm like, I love you, mum. I'm about to die. Like it felt so real. Like and
of course.
you know, and made the
you don't even know what you had.
Yeah. But that night passed and I didn't die. But I was like, I need to get out of this environment. You know, like the drugs and all that stuff was really messing with my head. So I decided to take a train into Brisbane and then eventually into, and you know, I went to the Smashing Pumpkins concert. And again, I was seeing like things moving around and I'm like, man, it's just what is going on? Like reality starting to bend and twist. Like it was becoming very abnormal. Like I'm at this Smashing Pumpkins concert and things are just really weird. And actually this is a side note, Billy Corgan owns the Australian Wrestling Federation or whatever it's called. So at one point during this concert, this half naked guy comes up like real muscly, and this lady comes on, and they're just like, and I'm like, what is going on here? And then the next thing, like she power drives him, you know, he power drives him or whatever.
Oh my god!
And this is in the middle of Psychosis. I'm like, what is going on?
You don't know what is real and what is not.
Yeah, I didn't. You know, it was pretty out of it actually. Anyway, so I was still going through the Psychosis, and where one of my uncles live. And I don't really know this uncle. I met him once day. The next thing I know is he's taking me to a Freemasons meeting. Freemasons meeting. So I'm like in a full-blown psychosis going to this Freemasons meeting.
What the heck?
Yeah, and I'm just like sitting, and they're all dressed up in these like really nice clothes.
Yes.
And we're eating food. All of a sudden, I'm in this Freemason thing, and they're doing like little competitions, and I'm winning like meat, like you know, I'm winning all these prizes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, they're definitely poisoning me tonight.
Yeah.
And they're sacrificing, because I don't really know this uncle as well, right?
Yeah.
You know,
and to be honest, and also your experience has been so bizarre.
Yeah.
So from a concert and whatever moving forward. Anything is possible at that point.
At that point, there was a complete panic about everything that was happening.
Yeah.
Like I would spend, you know, when I was in Brisbane, I was within hotel rooms and I was like, pretty much every night, like if I had eaten some food somewhere, got something Uber Eats or whatever, like I would just be like, oh my God, I'm dying tonight. Like this is it. And it just never happened so far. So yeah, that was one of the craziest experiences where I was just sort of like within this place and, you know, in this Freemasons meeting. And the next thing I did is I went to Thailand. You know, and Vietnam and Japan, and I had this whole trip. I had already booked.
Wow.
I had already booked in these countries that I was going to.
Wow.
And I was having the most severe psychosis I've ever experienced. Not drug related, not anything. You know, and I was like, I really want to cancel this. Like this is too much. Like, and funnily enough, the friend that I was in the Gold Coast with, the one that I was staying in that was using the substances. She said to me, like, you're experiencing these mental health challenges here in Australia. Because I was about to go back to New Zealand. Because in Australia, I started experiencing all this. I was like, I need to go back to New Zealand and be safe. And she was like, well, hold up. You're experiencing these mental health challenges here. You might as well stay here and enjoy this new experience of being in Australia and seeing these places.
True.
Because you're going to go back to New Zealand and your mental state's going to be the same. I don't know if that was good or bad advice, but it sort of like hit me where I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm here in Australia for the first time. So I started to think to myself, like, okay, I've never been to Asia. You know, I've never even been to Australia before this, right?
Yeah.
And before that, I hadn't even been to the South Island.
Yeah.
Why don't I just go to Thailand? If things become really bad, I can take a flight back to
New Zealand.
To New Zealand,
it's not too far.
It's not, It's very expensive and a bit of a detour, but it's like, if it happens, I can do this.
Yeah.
You know, so even up to the last, because I came back to New Zealand for about a month, preparing for this trip to Thailand. And I was, you know, these mental health things were getting more and more intense. And I was having a lot of panic with all this stuff and thinking like, okay, I'm just gonna get on the plane.
Mm.
All I gotta do is get on the plane. If things go really bad, I'll just turn around, you know? I was pretty much debating in my head up to that moment I had to go on the plane
Yes.
whether I was gonna follow through. I did. I got to Thailand. You know, like in my first week there, I met this Australian guy who was like a week within his first week of getting clean again. He had had this massive relapse, and we became really good. So he looked after me, and I also helped him get his foundation. And he's in Australia, back in Australia at the moment. And
Wow.
we talk every now and then, you know. And he really helped sort of ground me when I was in Asia for the first time, and I helped ground him in a way within his sobriety. But the thing is, these things were still going on. So
Wow.
I got to Sukhothai within central Thailand, where the ancient ruins are. And I was in this amazing luxury resort. And I started having these feelings of like, they will bring these water bottles
Yeah.
and like they're putting stuff into the water.
Yeah.
And they were asking me pretty standard questions like, oh, are you here by yourself? Like just making conversation, you know? And I'm thinking, why is he asking if I'm here by myself? Is he going to come and try to take me out tonight?
Yeah.
And I started to think like, I'm isolated in this luxurious resort. I'm about to die.
If you disappear, no one will know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Your concern is legitimate.
Maybe. You know, and let's just say it was very exaggerated though, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember
having against the father, I can tell you your concern is legitimate.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I think it was the second night I was on Sukhothai, or maybe the third night, I ended up having this massive thing where I thought, this is it. Like, I am literally dying here again in the hotel room. And I basically surrendered in this point. It's like, well, you know what? If I'm going to die, let it be, you know? And it was kind of interesting because from that day, things started to shift, you know, because I went through one of the most intense panic. I was also on lithium at this point too.
Yes.
And I started having movements and it turns out I think I might have had lithium poisoning. So I came off all my medication as well because I was only on lithium for bipolar.
Yeah.
And again, this was only about 2 years after the psych ward thing.
Yeah.
So I had been on these medication.
Yeah.
I came off lithium thinking I had lithium poisoning, thinking that my food had been poisoned.
Yes.
I actually probably had lithium poisoning actually because I was, you know, sweating out so much and the diet change, all that stuff. But so, you know, lithium poisoning, you know, these people within this resort had me isolated. They were about to kill me, you know, and I'm coming off my medication. You know, if you've been within the medical system, you know, you don't just come off your medication by yourself. You, I always have. It's not a good thing. I don't recommend it.
True.
Yeah, I really don't recommend it. So seek a healthcare professional, you know, fully, you know, coming off everything. I'm coming off the medication and this thing. And I was like, it was the most intense thing. And I was like, I'm going to die here. I am definitely dying. Then the next day ended up being one of the best days, you know, like I got into a bike and I went and cycled around and I went through parts of rural Thailand and actually got to see how the locals lived. And that was, I guess, my first exposure to a different culture in a less touristy way, in the less commercial way, you know, because Bangkok, when I was in there, it was very, you know, it was like any big city. I wasn't a big fan of it.
Busy.
You know? Yes,
man.
It was actually interesting when you're in a car though, like when you're taxiing, you know, taking a grab somewhere, and you see the driving and how intense it is. But you know, I had that best day. I ended up cycling like it must have been about 20 or 30 k's out to this other temple that was like in the middle of nowhere. And to get there, I had to go through these like little rural villages and stuff like that, and it was just so amazing. And I basically had one of the best experiences I've ever had.
Wow.
Following this night where I was certain this is death.
Wow.
You know, and I think the interesting thing about that is often when I've had these moments of my most difficult struggles, what has followed afterward has been
a
blissful experience. Yeah. I think by the time when I got to Chiang Mai, I had a contact I knew in there.
Yeah.
And it helped sort of ground me a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I went from Sukhothai, from that experience in the hotel, and then, you know, one of the best days afterwards, I ended up in Chiang Mai, and that helped ground me. And then ended up in Vietnam, and at this point I met some people, and like it just started to get a little bit easier. When I went from Vietnam to Osaka, flew to Hanoi to Osaka, and when I landed at Osaka, I had done this cruise to Halong Bay, and there was this couple on the plane that was on the cruise, Japanese couple. The guy in the couple, he said to me, "Welcome to Japan. You can relax now." And for some reason, that just gave me permission to just relax, chill out. I felt very safe. I didn't know if I was going to get into Japan at that point though.
Yeah.
Because I mean, my criminal record is definitely not that long.
I hear you.
Yeah. But I had a copy with me.
Yeah.
And I know there was some charges on there that, in Japan,
Yeah.
but I basically went there and I was just fully transparent, like, this is what I've done.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking, because I came from Vietnam,
Yeah.
there isn't a visa to go back.
Yeah.
You know, like, because Vietnam, it's not like, Thailand, you
Yes.
can just
I
enter.
hear you.
Yeah, so I was kind of like, okay, if they're going to kick me back to Vietnam, I don't know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
because I don't know if I'll be allowed in there,
Yeah.
But anyways, they let me in. And Japan, that month that followed, because I spent about a month in Japan, and I went all around.
Yeah.
Actually saw most of Japan, and that I think is the best month I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
It was just everything was it was amazing.
Wow.
It was a spiritual experience. Japan had everything there, right?
Yeah.
And again, it came after maybe 20 times in my head when I'm like, I've got to cancel this trip due to my mental health. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And just holding on just a little bit more,
just that question and self-doubt. Would I have that, like whatever that needed to get through the whole trip, but yet you make it through?
So the self, I don't know if it was self-doubt. It was more like, actually, maybe you're right. Maybe it was self-doubt. It was just fear of the experiences I was having. Because, some of those experiences with psychosis were so intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few that I've left out here too. Things like in Bangkok, I went to a meeting where I met this Australian guy. And we went to the food court one of those nights afterwards. It might have actually been the first time I met him. And one of the guys gave me some food to try out. And I ate it. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh my God, these guys from this 12-step meeting are trying to kill me.
Yeah.
And I ran into the bathroom and I was in a full-blown panic. And I came back out and I said to these guys, oh, look, I need to go home. I'm starting to feel tired. And this is the Australian guy. He sort of turned his face and he looked at me and I could see his face demeanor change. And he said, yeah, you're going to sleep good tonight. It was his voice became demeaning. It was like demonic. And it's like, what the hell's going on? Like it was just, reality was so distorted. So he meant, you look tired. You got to get good rest.
Yeah.
But the way my brain processed it for whatever reason. And then one of the guys, he followed me to make sure I would go to the Grab and get home safely. Yeah. But I'm like, this guy is coming and he's stalking me,
Yeah. Because at the time, like you couldn't truly differentiate what is real and what is not. What is your own experience?
I think for me, I had the side of my brain that had the logic, like the way I kind of think of it. I have a logical, rational side of my brain, which I have to involve quite often when I'm in these moments, where my head's like, everything's okay. You've experienced this stuff before. They aren't actually here to harm you.
Yeah.
But the issue becomes this emotional side of my mind.
I hear you.
The panic, the anxiety becomes so powerful, especially when bits of reality do start to distort, like the change in this guy's face.
But yet you still have, you were still able to have that groundedness, whatever that, as you say, to get you through to where you needed to. Yeah.
I think I become more cautious during those moments, especially, I mean, this was just a stranger I met. I didn't realize he was going to become a mate of mine.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But so I become a little bit more cautious with these things when I'm experiencing that. And that's not to say that I try as hard as I can to analyze it from my rational side of mine and be like, look, this is going to be okay. You've been in these situations. But at that point, I had never been in Asia. I'd never been to Thailand or Vietnam,
Yeah. And all you have is story about people get killed, people get
exactly,
people...
I spent a bit of time on the internet researching.
And that's why I know where you're coming from as well. Like in certain ways, certain degree of paranoia is healthy because that keep you safe.
And there was also, I guess, the side of it where it's common to have food poisoning within Southeast Asia. I've had food poisoning once in New Zealand, but I've never had it and overseas, And
it's true, like people hand you food to eat, like in all circumstances, you never know what truly inside the food is about. Again, coming from gangster father, I can say your concept is legitimate.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that, because even in my head, I've often thought that
No, my
You know,
father would say if you go to somewhere else, people offer you food, you don't know them, don't eat it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the other side of this is I've always trusted, not blindly, but
Yeah.
for overall trusted people within recovery.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so being within, because I had met these guys within the meeting, and I kind of thought like this is safe enough. And there's quite a lot of people around here. Like, why would he poison me? Like, are all these people here, this group of like 15 or whatever it was, are they all together trying to kill me? And this is the grand scheme, is like whenever a tourist comes to Bangkok, we're gonna like poison his food and kidnap him and kill him. And like I started analyzing it from that side.
The next day when you wake up, where's my kidney? You read news.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But usually it's not like 10 or 15 people after a 12-step meeting that do this.
Absolutely.
And I'm so grateful I stuck out again, because when I got to Japan, it was just the most amazing experience I still had. And since then I've I've gone all around lots of places. Like I've been in Italy and Switzerland, China I did recently, Malaysia I did last year.
Yeah. Wow.
Where else? Germany, France.
Wow.
When I say France, just Paris.
Yeah.
And Greece, just Athens. But like I've been to Paris and I've been to Athens.
That's pretty something.
Yeah.
I haven't been to any of those places.
Europe is amazing too. Yeah. I found Italy just a whole other world as well. I really loved Japan and Italy, two places I found as really amazing. Funnily enough, when I was coming back from the Italy trip, I had it was my first layover ever in China, and there was this guy there from Switzerland, and me and him were the last two people on the immigration line to come in on this 24-hour visa, and he's just like, hey, do you want to explore Guangzhou together? I was like, yeah, let's do that. Like, cause we're and we got into the airport like after the thing, and we
A guy from Switzerland.
a guy from Switzerland, random guy who his sister lives here in Napier actually. So he was coming to see his sister.
Yeah.
But anyways, like the two of us, we had just been in Italy, landed in Guangzhou, didn't know anything about China. We're just like, okay, we tried to find a way to get into the city. We spent 2 hours basically in the airport. Nobody spoke English. The subway people, the subway into the city, were just like, you need to get money out. Like they use Google Translator, saying, not Google Translator because it's banned there. The translation device, saying, you have to get some money out. So me and him were like crawling around looking for ATMs. Like, where's an ATM? And there's like we didn't know about Alipay.
This reminded me because you text me on WeChat and said, "Can you verify me?"
This time I learned about Alipay and WeChat.
I was sitting here doing my work and I was like, "What the hell?" But I say, so I was like, "Yeah, I know you need to be verified." WeChat account.
I'm so glad you verified me because when I got to China, my VPN broke as well this time around. Yes, I was actually like, I had come from Shenzhen into Beijing, and I was on this taxi ride, and I couldn't even figure out because the VPN wasn't working anymore. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to be in China for 2 weeks with no internet and no, like, how do you navigate this? And I was just like in the hotel, like in the taxi, like, this is it. And then I found out you can actually use your New Zealand SIM. So I had to reactivate my New Zealand SIM. It was $8 a day, but that's better than that was thanks for that WeChat.
Just suddenly remember. Yes. Oh, funny. Okay, carry on.
So me and this guy landed in Guangzhou. We were scaling the airport trying to find an ATM. Didn't know about Alipay or WeChat or anything like that. Nobody spoke English. Eventually, he found an ATM. His card was able to take some money out. Mine wasn't, because then I'm part of the international banking system. So I'm putting my card in his garage, and I'm like, I'm sure there's money in here, and I had internet in the VPN, and he had no internet, nothing. He had some maps on his phone, so like some written maps that showed the subway lines. So together, he paid for bits and pieces, and I had internet, and we navigated through Guangzhou. And we're just like crawling, figuring out like where we're going, what we're doing, and where I could pay for it, I would pay for it. Some places accepted the credit card. And then eventually we went through that whole mission, and it was just so difficult. And we ended up actually we had to get a DD, and it was like literally an hour, maybe 2 hours, less than 2 hours before we had to be back on the plane. and I think we were like an hour away, and I'm like sitting there and we're trying to figure out how to do DD, and none of the taxis will take us because you need to have DD, right? Or one of the apps. So I'm just trying to figure out, and he's like, oh, we don't know what we're going to do. You know, eventually I figured it out, and we took the taxi back to the plane. And then we ended up back in New Zealand, and that guy ended up becoming a really good mate of mine. And it was about, I don't know, 3-4 months later, I was in Switzerland to visit him, you know, and that's how I ended up in Switzerland for the first time. And
what a story! What a story!
Yeah,
wow.
It was one of those.
You make a lot of friends through your journey.
You do make a lot of friends when you're traveling, you know,
by yourself.
Yeah, that's the beauty of solo travel, you know. Like
now, you make me want to travel by myself.
Yeah, it's the best thing, you know, because you're kind of forced into, especially when you're in different countries. You're forced to interact with people, and I'm very lucky to have these 12-step meetings wherever I go, because I can jump into a meeting somewhere, find locals that are attending it, and they show me around. You know, you know, it's been really good. Yeah, it's been really good in that sense, you know.
Even in Thailand, they have 12 steps.
They have it, yep.
Wow.
Yep. Thailand, I did one in Beijing.
Beijing also have?
Yeah. I was gonna do one in Shanghai when I went there, but just the time was too limited.
This is crazy.
Yeah. There's the stuff. It's global.
That's great. That's why your lived experience is so valuable, because it's not the rural experience, international experience.
It's an international thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's and it's actually amazing to be able to, like, there was one I did in Belgium. Was it Belgium? No, in Rome. I did a meeting in Belgium and Rome, but the meeting I did in Rome, it was a speaker meeting, and this guy basically shared for about 35-40 minutes of his lived experience, and his story was crazy. His cousin drowned with him. They were playing as children, and then his uncle wanted to kill him, basically. So he had to run away and go into hiding. And then he had like diabetes, and he was in a diabetic coma. Like, his story was like, it was just so incredible. And to see where he was when you know, he was about a year off all substances at that point. And I was like, I'm sitting in Rome in some amazing big, you know, the Roman kind of, you know, the Italian like churches, you know, sitting in some random beautiful Italian church. Listen to this Belgian guy talking about how he was accused of murdering his cousin as a kid, and like all his experiences. And I'm like, how do I get so blessed to be in all these different like this, even this option to be in all these different rooms and hear all these different stories, you know? Yeah. I'm just, you know,
No, that's beautiful. I mean, like, but kudos to you, because you don't have to go to other places and attend the 12-step meeting, but you did. And that's what you get. Because you appreciate, you genuinely value, you know, like what they have provided to you. That's why you, even during your traveling time, you still seek out stories. And
definitely, it's. I mean, I live and breathe this recovery stuff. You know, like I'm maybe a little bit too intense with it, to be honest. Like, I'm really full on. Like, this is everything. I mean, you've read my Facebook statuses. It's everything's like recovery based, pretty much. You know, but I try not to implicate too much of like that stuff, you know, like I talk about all the different aspects of lived experience, you know, and it's just something I'm very passionate about, you know.
And I'm so grateful that you did that. Like, even on Facebook, I say your voice, your face, and your authenticity is needed, because in this space, especially being Asians, you know, like to be able to honest and also honoring your experience as who you are, it's not many people are doing it.
And
for Asian communities.
In Asian communities, it's very taboo. So how we were talking about in Thailand, you know, those 12-step meetings, particularly narcotics, anything drug related, those types of meetings are a bit more frowned upon, because within their culture, like, the drugs are a big no-no, even though it's very public. You go down Khao San Road,
the use of
it's everywhere, you know. You go down Khao San Road, everybody's on it, on some substances, whatever it is, you know.
But no one wants to talk about it.
Nobody wants to talk about it. When I went through Japan, I think it was in Tokyo, I met this guy. I still got his number. and he had been put into a psych ward. So he came from this corporate job. Due to his drinking, he was thrown into a psych ward. He'll never be able to return to his corporate role anymore. He's brought like almost dishonor and shame to the family, and I guess to his culture, because
Yeah,
in Japan you have to be able to drink.
exactly.
You know, there's vending machines out there that just got alcohol. You know,
Yeah,
it's just an innate part of their culture. You
yeah,
know, and unfortunately, because he's been outed as this alcoholic, they had thrown him into a psych ward, and his old life is basically, and he was telling me like this is it for him. Like he's not allowed to return to his old position. He might not be able to get a job again, at least not one like that again.
yeah, yeah,
And his life was forever ruined.
yeah,
You know, so within Asian communities, it happens. It's very hidden. New Zealand, they'll pay you here. You know, you're on the benefit. They'll pay you to go into rehab and get sober and clean. You know, the stigma isn't here. But that's one of my experiences in some of these international communities and even in these rural communities where getting access is harder.
yeah.
Within rural New Zealand, it's very small communities. You're talking
Yes.
about towns of like, you know, maybe
Yeah.
1,000, 2,000 people. If you have an alcohol or drug problem and your behavior is problematic due to that, it's going to be very well known. You know, so getting access to help, then also within those small places, you go to, you know, some line of support,
Mm.
and people might see you go to wherever you're looking for the support. You know, you might people will know you.
Yeah.
You know, and it becomes a lot more difficult because it's kind of scary accessing help for yourself. Because it's like, who's going to be there?
Yeah.
Do they know me?
Mm.
Is this going to ruin my reputation? In places like Auckland, it's so big and there's so many options. You're probably going to eventually find people you know. But within those places, within rural New Zealand, it's very much like you're almost definitely going to run into someone you know. And in places like Japan, again, it's really frowned
Mm.
upon, and it's a cultural taboo to be in that. You know.
Yeah, and I truly believe like what you say because because your experience are very unique. That you experience it from a very young age and also your early adulthood as well, and
Mm.
that gave another layer of understanding. You
Mm.
know, like from child and adolescent perspective, which is again not many. You know, like lived experience have that, and also your like second generations of Fijian Indians, and you have that you know the experience of like the family dynamic and also how society.
I
Yeah,
like to think of myself first generation New Zealander, really,
yeah,
because
exactly. Thank you.
my connection to Fiji is almost minimal. I did go to Fiji. Fiji's been one of the places I've visited in recovery,
Yeah,
um, and I found like I didn't have much of a
yeah,
connection there. You know,
yeah,
I mean, I've been there 3 times, twice with my family when I was younger,
yeah.
and once by myself, and I've never really felt at home
Connected.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
To you, it's just a name.
yeah.
It's just a names that your parents carry.
Definitely.
Yeah,
You know, and I think it's important to acknowledge my ancestry with all this, you
I
know.
hear you.
But for me, I don't have connection. Like, I mean, at one point, one of my ancestors would have been on a boat from
Yeah,
India to Fiji,
yeah,
and likely they would have got stuck there. It's probably very likely what happened. And like I don't have connection to any of this
yeah,
history, and it's only something I've really looked into
yeah,
within the past couple of years, really. You know, about the indentured service, servitude, indentured servant period, or whatever it is. Basically, the outlawed slavery, late 1800s. By that point, it was, you know, so they got people to sign over that they're willing
yeah,
to be indentured labor. You know, and you know, obviously that's how my ancestors ended up in Fiji. And yeah, it's quite a sad history, really. And the thing about also Fijian Indians is we don't really get placed within. I know by statistically we come under Asian. You know, like when they're taking stats for healthcare New Zealand, all this kind of stuff, we're considered Asian. But we also have this Pacifica
yeah.
background, and there's a lot of Pacific cultures that get a lot of support through grants and all this kind of stuff. You know, special places within, you know, universities or whatever, like incentives to help them. But for Fijian Indians, we don't really have a very strong connection to Asia, or India, and our Fijian part is also sort of dismissed as well because, you know, we've been there for many generations often, you know,
Yeah,
but we're not really considered a Pacific Islander, you know,
exactly.
and it becomes quite difficult then, you know, because like for someone like me, like being born here, I don't have a connection to Fiji, I don't have a connection to India,
Yes.
but these are two separate, like, massive cultural experiences of my ancestry that's sort of washed away.
Yeah.
Like, so what am I? Am I Fijian? Am I Indian?
Yeah.
Am I New Zealander?
Yeah.
It's like I don't really know, but
Yes.
I've decided to go down the path where I I view myself as someone that's born in New Zealand, a South Aucklander. I don't have much of a connection to anywhere else, and I don't have much of an interest to actually get that connection as well. And I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing, because like I'm happy with English being the only language I fully understand. I'm happy with not fully understanding the cultural practices of my ancestors, because my culture's been shaped by my life here. And it's also, as I've traveled abroad, I've picked up other bits of culture here and there and learned a lot of things. And I definitely do want to go to India and Nepal at some point to just learn a bit more about, I guess, where my people, where my ancestors came from. But at the same time, I'm not in a particular rush to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what I hear, even from your experience, like you are international. That's how I felt. That's why you open to cultures, open to experience, open to going to different places, like where even a lot of people probably wouldn't have the confidence and comfortability to go to 12-step program in different country. Yet you did that. Another thing I want to highlight, I really appreciate your honesty about how you see cultural identity is being, like constructs based on your parents, like because none of them are relevant to you. And you have to find that because whatever reference they draw on have no reference point to you because you wasn't born there. And that is all where a lot of second generation of Asian who being born, but yet because they happen to be Asians, felt confused because the environments that being provided based on those value are not resonate to their experience to the external world when they step outside of their home. And so that create a lot of, like incongruent messages between home environments and also society constructs. And then on top of that, like noises and words being imposed on you or who you are, yet you have no resonance with, then you have to figure that out yourself.
Yeah, and there's aspects of New Zealand that's still very racist.
Yeah.
I remember, again, this is a lot of the stuff is like around high school and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there was this one guy. He said to me like, "You'll never be a New Zealander. Like, even though you've been born in New Zealand, you'll just never be one of us."
Ah,
And
sorry.
like 15 or probably 14. Like, am I a New Zealander? What am I? Like, yeah. And some of my cousins, they've been more interested in their heritage and they speak the language. And my brother is a little bit better in terms of he can speak a little bit of Hindi. He makes an attempt at home with my parents. He has more of a connection, I think, culturally. But for me, it's been something I've never been too, too drawn into.
And you should be allowed to because it's your own choice.
Yeah. I think also the cultural, when we're talking about, I'm still growing up in a house that is Fijian Indian parents with, my grandmothers here and aunties and uncles, and they all got certain expectations culturally. Things like all my cousins got married. Well, my dad's side, anyways, that are here, they all got married basically in the 20s, early 20s. They all got children and families now. And yeah, there was always this kind of thing like, when is he going to get married? And yeah, that was not something. I mean, I was so busy on survival mode for most of my life through these mental health and addiction challenges. Having a partner wasn't ever like having a long-term relationship wasn't something I think I was ready for before, And I think it's a problem within their culture because then there was conversations between my parents and my grandparents and all that. It's like, well, what's wrong with him? Why is he so depressed? If he just gets himself a girlfriend and gets married and has children, he'll be happy. But like that's not going to solve, going through depressive stuff. That's not going to solve the the alcohol, drug addiction. If anything, I've seen that happen where people have used getting a partner as a solution with some devastating consequences.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the only answer.
And it's also worked for some people. For some people, they've gotten a partner, they've gotten children, all this kind of stuff, and they're like, okay, my drug use and stuff is a little bit problematic, so I'm gonna. But I was never one of those. I know in myself, I'm definitely not one of those people, because everything that's ever happened in my life, I've never been able to control, the use of substances when I take it, and the same with my mental health challenges. I've never really been in control of those things, So even if I had a partner there to support me through all that, I would have just brought in like pain and suffering into their life. And I feel now within my 30s, I'm actually in a place where I'm mentally stable enough, financially stable enough. Well, that one's a bit hit or miss because I travel so much, I blow all my money. But, generally speaking, if I wanted to,
You're living your life.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if it's going to involve having, a long-term partner yet.
Doesn't matter.
Like I've gone on a few dates, and I haven't, quite a few dates over the past few years, and yeah, so far I haven't met somebody that I feel, and I love being single, because these things like solo traveling, I've often thought about it, because last year I was dating this girl, and I was kind of thinking, oh, am I going to have to sacrifice traveling now? Because what's going to happen if this ends up becoming serious? Just having these thoughts, as you do when you meet somebody. And I'm like, I don't want to do that, like, because her situation was quite different to mine. Like, I have this freedom of just being able to do whatever I want, And when you're in a relationship, you have to compromise some stuff, It's a collaboration, you got to be able to take their needs into consideration as well as yours. And one of my big needs, at least it was for quite a while, is that freedom, is that ability to, like, okay, I'm heading towards a mental health thing. I need to take a break, and I'm just going to go do that in Australia or whatever, like, I've needed that freedom for my own well-being. And I don't think I could be able to do that within a relationship. Well, I haven't met anybody so far that I think I would be able to do that with yet, And that, again, from the Asian family perspective, is kind of not very good. It's like, why is he 34 and still single? And he's wasting money, is what I hear from my parents. He's wasting money going to these places and doing all these things. And I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever done with my life, is travel,
I tell you, though, there's something very different from Western world and collective culture. Collective culture don't necessarily value experience. They prefer that kind of concrete boxes that where you can build something, that is your fence, that is your house, that is yours. But they don't look at the lived experience, like as what you say, that fall outside of that blueprint. That's why me being gay, has always been such a big challenge, is because I don't fall into that blueprints, children, and thank goodness my parents are very understanding, so I do not have. But I know a lot of Asian gay men struggle because of the need to compliance to that blueprint is very important.
I mean, I don't know. I can't even imagine what that would be like, because, again, it was much like my use with substances and mental health stuff. It wasn't a choice and it's the same thing with sexuality, right? And some of these things are so taboo within Asian cultures, like, and like, I've often, because that's something that's also been said from family, sometimes, like, things like, because, I'm not married, and, all this, they're like, oh, are you gay and stuff? And it's like, what if I am? But it's such a thing. They're like, no, you're definitely not gay. And it's like, well, if I was, what is wrong with that? Like,
how do you know? Do I have to? Like,
do I have to? How do I prove?
You. Yeah. But where are you at your life now?
Where am I at in my life?
Yeah. How would you describe? Yeah. Are you?
I think I'm at, despite all this cancer stuff that's been going on, I think I'm at the best point I've ever been. Like, work stuff, career stuff is the first thing is I'm employable. Like, for most of my life, I was not employable, and now they're asking me to come into tables and meetings where good discussions are being had.
And then they want to hear your voices. They want to hear authentic lived experience, how they can make better for their services.
Definitely. Like, well, this is one of the things, like, when I was going through all these challenges, like, I didn't think that my life had any meaning or purpose
Mm,
behind it. Little did I know, like coming on the other side of it,
mm,
that I would have this opportunity to use these
mm,
experiences to help support others, help try to speak into, service design or
mm.
speak,
Even
yeah,
conferences.
conferences and stuff like this.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Did a couple of years ago, go and speak to like medical students at university. I was like, okay,
Wow.
like,
No, that's
yeah,
awesome. I'm
yeah,
so pleased that they do.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
so critical.
there was an Australian
Yeah.
organization that deal a lot with homelessness, and I've only had a very small picture of homelessness. And again, they had it through Teams or Zoom. I think it was Zoom or whatever. Online. Basically, this conference. You see it in the room. There was like 100 people there, and I was just sort of sharing my experiences
Wow.
around.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and mainly around the addiction, mental health, but then also bringing
Mm,
in a little bit of that homelessness stuff.
mm.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you these
Mm,
questions.
mm.
And so usually I ask people about this question. If you have a chance to go back to where you were first experience, like your life, either because of overdose or whatever, the younger self, what would you say to yourself?
It's gonna be okay. I don't think there's anything else I could have said, because some of these experiences, it's like I can try to give advice to my younger self. I know my younger self probably wouldn't hear it, and how do I even tell them how life will end up being one day,
Mm,
potentially, like even the things of like being able to go travel and, being free from a lot of these challenges. And I think some of these things is really like, yeah, you can have all the advice. I think it's where you come in from a clinical perspective.
mm,
You can have all the advice, all the strategies, all the tools, but it's not till you actually experience these things for yourself and find what works for you, and I don't think I could have told my younger self, like, oh, like, there's like X, Y, and Z. If you
mm,
did all this, you're gonna be well,
mm,
you know. And the thing is, I might tell my younger self that
mm.
what works for me now, and then might try it and might not work as
Yeah,
well. Like
yeah,
this is,
I hear you.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
think you really have to go through that personal journey to discover. And
yeah.
tools sometimes work for you, sometimes work for me, and then they stop working, and I got to
Mm,
pick, and I got to adapt. Like my recovery is ever evolving,
mm,
because I got to adapt to what's happening to me right
mm,
now, the experiences I'm going through. Sometimes the old stuff works. Something, a tool that I haven't
mm,
used for like 5 years, I might pick it up. Recently, I've been doing a whole bunch of walking and stuff.
mm.
Going through.
Which is
I haven't done that for.
wonderful.
I haven't really
Yeah,
done that since I was
yeah,
in, probably like when I was in Germany or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's been a while since I was,
Tramping.
yeah, traveling and all that. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
like, but I can't always do that because of, sometimes the weather's not great, but
yeah.
also my work schedule has been so hectic.
Before we wrap it out, is there anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about any like parting words or anything. I guess like you've got a small snapshot of what my life's like. Like there's so many other experiences and stories, like it'll probably take you 34 years if we really got to sit through and talk through all of this. And yeah, like I guess there's a small snapshot of what I'm like, and it's ever changing, ever
Mm.
evolving. Yeah, I don't know. That's not really.
But
Yeah.
I like what you say though, because I wholeheartedly agree with you that recovery is not something that like have an end. It's a
Mm.
ever evolving.
Well, the
Yeah,
thing they often say,
yeah.
it's a journey, not a
I
destination.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely that, and there's some really like, again, like, so some of my experiences after, getting clean and sober haven't been the best. Like, I've had psych ward admissions, friends
Mm,
take their lives, friends die from this and that, from alcoholism, mental health stuff. I've had a psychosis like come out of nowhere, but at the same time, like I've had these amazing experiences where I've been able to travel through 14 different countries, and I've been able to meet some amazing people like yourself. Um, I've really, like, it's, I guess I got to take the good with the bad. Even things like having cancer and all this come out of nowhere. It's all part of the experience. And like when I found out about the cancer, actually, it was around November, and you know how, well, my head catastrophizes
of
everything,
course, anyone would. Yeah.
and then I started to reflect on it a bit deeper, and I was kind of like, if I am about to die, it's okay. It's okay, because recovery has given me this like 6 or 7 years where my life has just been amazing despite the challenges. Before that, my life was such a mess, so uncertain, it was a chaotic mess, and it was just struggle, you know. But thanks to recovery, I actually got to experience some amazing moments. And I came to this moment of, I guess it was quite a spiritual experience where I'm okay, whatever happens. I'm just gonna leave it within the universe's
Wow.
pathway. If I'm meant to die, I will die, and I'll
Wow.
just trust that that's what's meant to be, and that's the best outcome, you know.
Wow.
Because it's what do you do in that moment? You either panic,
Mm.
because that could have been that would have been my old thing. I would have definitely panicked
Mm.
and probably ended up back in the psych ward, really. But instead,
Wow.
I'm like, well, I've actually gotten a chance to live an amazing life due to recovery, and if this is it, it's okay, you know. I think that's a moment, that's an experience and a feeling that's also fleeting. You know, you might ask me that in a year's time, and if I'm still alive, and I might be like, no, I want to stay alive. I don't want to die yet, you know. But I felt at that moment, if I had died, it would have been okay. You know?
I will have you back next year. How about that 2027?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
But
Well, any time I'm free, I'm happy to come in and have a chat. You know?
I tell you, we only unpacked a snippet of, you know, like
Yeah.
what we can, and I felt like there's so much more we can talk about. This is before finishing. Like, I think we both agree the institution and the clinic shouldn't just confine to medications or talking therapies, because there's a lot more, you know, like way can use to help individual, and that including, you know, like what we talk about, creativities and physical, you know, activities and other means where it might be more effective than just medication interventions or talking therapies.
And I think that's where it's a very personal experience to find what recovery is. Well, one of the I bought this dog in the middle of my addiction. I walked into Animates and walked out with like a $2,500 dog, you know, and I had nowhere to keep it. I was at my parents at the time, and I went home and
I love it.
and I tried to hide her in my bedroom, like this little puppy, and obviously very quickly got discovered. But she's ended up being amazing. You know, like animal assisted therapy, you know, things like that. There's so many different modes of recovery and different tools and strategies, you know. And yeah, I think within the system at the moment, it's like, let's medicate because you have this problem, and that is the solution. But there's a whole bunch around, how is that person actually going to live? And how is that person actually going to be reintegrated into society afterwards? And this is where lived experience really fills that gap. You know, the clinical model says you have this problem, the solution is medication, sometimes some psychotherapy, or you know, some kind of, you know, talk therapy. But lived experience is basically a sidestep to that. Like, okay, yeah, you've got this, but here's how you can actually live a life of contentment, something that you can actually enjoy. You know, this is how you can actually live with what you're going through. Because I think that's the gap I had before. I didn't know how to live, you know, and I learned that through others that have gone through the same journeys, similar journeys.
That's going to be a rare for sure that I'm going to put out what you just said.
There might be a few things.
No, that's very, very well put together and beautifully sum up, you know, like why lived experience are so important in the space of mental health, addiction, and recovery. I'm going to cry. I just want to say thank you for sharing your story.
No worries. Thank you for inviting me.